You know how sometimes you hear a phrase and it really gets you thinking? Well, we were going through some of Sadhguru's talks,
Hmm.
and he said something that made us kind of stop and go, what's that about?
Yeah.
He said, heaven has collapsed.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, when you think about it, he might be onto something. That whole idea of heaven, the traditional kind of picture,
Right.
doesn't really seem to have the same oomph it used to.
It really doesn't. I mean, he even tells this story about asking a bunch of college students if they want to go to heaven.
Oh, wow.
And they just kind of stared at him,
Mhm.
blank stares. But you asked that question 50 years ago,
Oh, yeah.
packed house, everyone's hands shooting up.
Totally different reactions.
It's like, what happened?
It really makes you wonder, what's going on? What's shifted?
Well, I mean, religion's not exactly having a great run.
True.
With all the scandals and the historical stuff and just this feeling that maybe we don't need a rule book to tell us how to live.
Yeah, it's no wonder people are second-guessing the whole afterlife thing. We're way more focused on what we can see right in front of us, the tangible stuff.
But then that raises the question, like, isn't heaven supposed to be the ultimate goal?
Right.
The thing we're all working towards. So how's heaven collapsing a good thing?
That's where it gets interesting. Sadhguru's not saying that the whole idea of a pleasant afterlife is bad. He's saying that hanging on to that promise of happiness down the line, it can actually stop us from having a great life right now.
So we're so busy trying to get into the VIP lounge later
Exactly.
that we miss the whole show happening right in front of us.
Yeah.
But okay, so how do we change that focus?
Well, he talks about creating something he calls heaven on earth.
Okay.
And he says it starts with pleasantness.
Pleasantness.
Yeah, but he's not just talking about like bubble baths and rainbows.
Right.
He's talking about pleasantness on a much deeper level. In our bodies, minds, emotions, our surroundings, even in the energy we bring to our work, to our relationships.
So it's more than just feeling good. It's like creating this sense of well-being that's just kind of permeates everything.
Yeah.
But isn't that setting the bar kind of high?
It is a high bar, yeah, and it takes time. It's a process. But Sadhguru argues that if we're not feeling that pleasantness, it's because we're not really managing our inner world very well. He uses this analogy, says the human body is like a high-tech chemical factory.
And we're essentially bad CEOs.
Kind of, yeah. Relying on these quick fixes from the outside to manage our emotions instead of dealing with the root of the problem.
It's like that late-night pint of ice cream after a rough day.
Maybe.
Guilty's charged.
He might suggest skipping the ice cream.
Right.
But the point is, the bigger picture is that it's about taking ownership of that inner world.
Okay.
He says it's not really the world itself, it's our reaction to it.
Okay. So instead of just constantly reacting to everything that comes at us, we need to learn to respond more deliberately.
More consciously, yeah. And yeah, easier said than done, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, years of ingrained habits, societal pressures. Frankly, most of us never really learned how to handle our inner world.
No, we don't.
But he thinks there are tools.
He does, yeah.
For inner transformation.
Yeah.
What does that even look like? What are we talking about here?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to dig into in the rest of this deep dive. Because Sadhguru believes that just like you wouldn't try to fix a leaky faucet without a wrench.
You wouldn't try to navigate your inner world without the right tools.
Exactly. And millions of people have had success with his program, so these tools work. So are you ready to explore? Absolutely. And it's not even just about managing our emotions and reactions. Sadhguru goes a step further.
Okay.
He says, who told you you're not already in heaven and making a mess of it?
Wow, that's a whole different way of looking at it.
Right.
So instead of trying to get to some far-off paradise, we're already here.
Yeah.
But we're just, I don't know, messing it up.
Yeah, maybe we're not doing a great job of appreciating what we got. And that's where this whole idea of cultivating pleasantness comes back. If we're messing up heaven, it's probably because we're not really putting pleasantness front and center,
But we're not talking about just chasing pleasure or just feeling good all the time.
Right.
We talked about this. Sadhguru's definition of pleasantness is much bigger.
It's deeper, yeah. It's about that sense of well-being that touches everything.
Yeah.
Your physical health, your mind, how clear it is, your emotions, how steady you are, even the spaces we live in. He even connects it to success.
That's interesting because when I think of success, I think of the traditional idea of it. It feels kind of like a grind.
Yeah.
Long hours, competition, the pressure to achieve.
Yeah.
Doesn't exactly feel pleasant.
No, not really. But Sadhguru is saying that real success, the kind of success that fits in with this whole heaven on earth thing. It's about making a good impact, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
So it's less about climbing the ladder and more about doing work that feels meaningful.
Yeah.
And it helps everyone feel better.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of self-awareness, more than most of us are taught.
Right.
Goes back to Sadhguru's point about really knowing our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions.
Because if we're just on autopilot, just reacting to every little thing, we're just going to keep repeating the same old patterns.
Over and over. In our personal lives, but also on a bigger scale, he even says like kind of unconscious reaction, it's like a kind of slavery.
Ooh, that's a strong word.
It is. But think about it. If someone else was in charge of our thoughts and emotions, we'd call that slavery, right? But when we just let our unconscious reactions run the show, we're doing it to ourselves.
Okay, so how do we break free from that?
Especially if we've been on autopilot for years.
Okay, our whole lives.
Basically. It's not like we can just suddenly become enlightened beings.
Right.
It takes time. But that's where the tools come in.
Okay, the tools. Right.
Remember that screwdriver analogy? We need tools for the physical world. We need them for our inner world, too.
So what kind of tools are we actually talking about? Give me some examples.
Think of things that help you connect with yourself, that bring you calm, that make things clear.
Okay.
Meditation, for example, or yoga, or breath work. Even just being out in nature.
Right.
These things might seem simple, but they can be really powerful when you do them with intention.
So it's about finding things that help us become more aware
In the present, yeah.
of what's going on inside.
Exactly. And these practices, they're not new, they're old, rooted in wisdom that's been around for a long time.
Right.
Sadhguru is basically putting together a toolkit for inner transformation using this huge library of human knowledge.
And millions of people find these practices helpful.
They do.
So there's something to it.
Yeah, definitely.
But for someone who's never tried any of this before, it can feel kind of intimidating.
For sure.
Where do you even start?
Sadhguru talks about learning how to sit, how to breathe, how to manage ourselves. These things sound basic.
Yeah.
But he says most of us never really learn to do them well.
It's true. We learn how to drive, how to use a computer.
Right.
But no one teaches us how to, chill out our nervous system or find inner peace.
And that's where these ancient practices come in. They give us a way to learn those skills. And as we get better at them, we become stronger, more adaptable. We can handle life's curveballs better.
And isn't that kind of what this whole heaven on earth idea is about?
Yeah.
Creating a life where we feel peaceful and joyful.
Content, yeah.
Even when things are tough.
Exactly. It's about changing ourselves so we can experience life fully right now instead of waiting for some reward later on. But it also makes you think, if this planet is our heaven, then how are we doing at taking care of it?
That's a good point. Because heaven on earth can't exist in a world that's full of destruction and injustice and suffering.
Right. And this is where Sadhguru's teachings go beyond just personal change.
Okay.
He's clear that individual transformation is important, but it's not enough.
So how do we bridge that gap?
How do we go from changing ourselves to changing the world around us?
Yeah.
He said, if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself first.
Okay.
He believes the outer world is just a reflection of what's going on inside of us.
So as we become more peaceful and compassionate, those qualities naturally spread outwards.
Right. It affects how we act, how we treat each other. It's like that Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see.
Exactly. So it's not one or the other. Inner change and outer change, they're connected.
Deeply connected.
And we need both to create a world that's good for everyone.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that question we asked earlier. If we're already in heaven, but we're kind of wrecking it, what are we going to do about it?
Are we going to keep doing the same things? Keep making the same mistakes?
Or are we going to step up and do something different?
Right. Become more conscious.
Yeah.
Work together to make things better.
Exactly. And that takes creativity, thinking outside the box. Sadhguru talks about being good engineers of our destiny. I think that applies to our own lives, but also to how we deal with these global problems.
So instead of getting bogged down in all the bad stuff, we need to use our imagination, our resourcefulness, to find solutions that work for everyone.
Exactly. And that takes cooperation, sharing what we know, working together. We got to come together as a planet.
Right.
And use our collective wisdom to create a future that's actually sustainable and fair.
And speaking of tools, what about technology?
What about it?
It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
On the one hand, it can connect us.
Bring us together, speed up progress.
But on the other hand,
It can distract us, divide us, create new problems.
And it's evolving so fast.
Crazy.
We got to be really careful about how we're using it.
What kind of values we build into it.
Yeah. Sadhguru talks about using technology consciously, right?
He does. He's embraced the digital world.
But he's also clear that we got to be in charge of it.
Not the other way around.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
Using technology to make things better without letting it control us.
Right.
But even beyond our relationship with technology, I think there's a bigger question here about the human mind.
What do you mean?
Remember that chemical factory analogy?
Yeah.
If we're capable of all these emotions, all these experiences, what's possible if we really learn to master our inner world?
If we can create peace and joy and love within ourselves, what kind of impact could that have on the world?
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
I think the potential is huge, but we have to change how we see things. Heaven on earth isn't a destination. It's a journey.
Of inner and outer transformation. Yeah.
And we're all on this journey together. So what does that journey actually look like?
That's what we'll get into in the last part of this deep dive.
Okay.
Sadhguru gives some really specific advice on how to walk this path, how to cultivate that pleasantness, that awareness,
right,
and ultimately how to create that heaven on earth that's based on love and wisdom and a deep connection to who we really are.
So we talked about heaven collapsing and this whole idea of building a heaven on earth by cultivating pleasantness and the tools for inner transformation and taking action together. Where do we even begin? What are the first steps on this journey?
Sadhguru, he really emphasizes paying attention.
Okay.
He says, attention is the most valuable currency you have. Sounds simple.
It does.
But with all the distractions these days, it's kind of radical, you know?
Because where we put our attention, that's where our energy goes.
Right.
And that energy, that's what shapes our reality.
Exactly.
So if our attention is all over the place, our energy's scattered, and it's hard to create a good life, let alone a whole heaven on earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when we can focus, when we can just be present.
Even for a little bit.
Yeah, even just a few minutes.
Things change.
Things change.
We start to see things more clearly.
We notice our thoughts, our emotions, all those patterns we get stuck in.
And that awareness, that's the key, right?
It is.
Because once you're aware of those patterns, you can start to change them.
You can make different choices. You're not just on autopilot anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where those tools for inner transformation come in, right?
That's right.
Meditation, yoga, all that stuff.
Spending time in nature. Yeah.
They help us cultivate that awareness.
That presence, that being here now. Yeah.
But Sadhguru also talks about a more mystical path.
He does.
Like that cosmic wrench we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that all about?
That's where things get a little, I don't know, a little more out there. This path, it's about exploring the very nature of existence. Like, what is consciousness? What is reality?
Deep stuff.
It's not just about feeling good.
Okay.
It's about understanding, like, the basic fabric of life.
So it's less about managing our inner world and more about, like, expanding it.
Yeah, connecting to something bigger.
Okay.
And it's not for everyone. It's for those who are really looking for that deeper understanding.
Right.
Who want to explore the big mysteries.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Some people like building houses. Some people like writing music.
Different strokes, right?
Exactly. But there's beauty in seeing that we're all on the same journey, really.
Yeah, we're all looking for connection, meaning something that feels real.
Exactly. And whether we go for those practical tools or the more mystical stuff, the end goal is the same.
To create heaven on earth.
For ourselves and for everyone who comes after us.
And that brings us back to you, the listener. If heaven is something we can make right here, right now, what can you do to bring more pleasantness into your life?
What calls to you? What are you curious about trying?
Because like Sadhguru says, the human mind, it's the most complex thing we know of.
It really is.
So how much time are we spending trying to understand it?
That's a great question to think about.
And it reminds us that this whole journey, it starts with one step.
Just one.
A step toward awareness.
Toward kindness, toward taking ownership of how we feel and what we do.
Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new things to think about.
Maybe even inspired you to learn more about Sadhguru.
Remember, we all have the power to create heaven on earth.
We really do.
Keep exploring, keep shining bright. We'll see you next time.